Sheriff David Garrett listened to a recording that would haunt him until his retirement 18 months later, when the 911 call came in at 3:42 a.m. on a November night, when the majority of Glacier County had already been covered by 3 feet of fresh snow. "Caller reports family members acting strange," was all that was written in the dispatcher's notes. "I'm requesting help right away." Mid-sentence, the connection was lost. Deputy Lisa Martinez's voice was tight with something Garrett had never heard from his typically calm second-in-command. "Sheriff, you need to hear this recording," she said. Before becoming a deputy, Martinez worked as a 911 dispatcher for 8 years, during which time she heard every type of emergency call. This one is unique. Quite different. Garrett pressed play on the digital recording system. The call quality was poor, filled with in the background, there was static, and what sounded like wind howling. Then came the frantic, whispered voice of a woman. 911, what's your emergency? They are no longer my family. The caller was a woman in her mid-30s who spoke so softly that it was nearly impossible to hear her. They sound and look like them, but they're not them. You must assist me. Ma'am, could you tell me where you are? Hendricks Homestead, mile marker on Route 47? Maybe 15? I'm not sure. It's snowing in here. It has snowed in here for 6 days. They also underwent a transformation. First my husband, then my children. They are aware that I am calling and are currently downstairs. They're paying attention. What do you mean they changed, ma'am? They don't blink anymore. I timed it. My husband hasn't blinked in 4 hours, and they eat differently. They put food in their mouths, but they're just studying it. Like they've never eaten before. And at night, I can hear them talking in the basement, but it's not English. It's not any language. Are you in danger right now? They're coming up the stairs. Oh God, they're coming. They know I called. How do they know? They're smiling at me. All 3 of them. The same smile, the exact same. The line went dead with a sound that wasn't quite static, more like hundreds of voices whispering in unison for a split second. Garrett felt ice in his veins. He'd been doing this job for 28 years, had heard plenty of domestic disturbances, mental health crises, drug-induced paranoia. But something about this woman's voice carried a conviction that transcended those explanations. Where's Hendricks Homestead? He asked. Martinez pulled up the map. Jesus, it's 40 miles into the backcountry, accessible only by a logging road that's definitely impassable right now. No cell coverage, they must have a satellite phone. The property belongs to Sarah Hendricks, 34, married to Mark Hendricks, 36. 2 kids, Emma and Jacob, ages 8 and 6. Who else heard this call? Just me and dispatcher Jenny Kowalski. Sheriff, Jenny's been doing this for 15 years, and after she transferred that call, she locked herself in the bathroom and wouldn't come out for 20 minutes. She's requesting leave starting tomorrow. Garrett made the decision that would define his last year in law enforcement. Get Detective Holden, Dr. Chen if he's available, and whoever we can reach from search and rescue. We're going out there. In this weather? Sheriff, we could barely get a snowmobile through that terrain in perfect conditions. With 3 feet of fresh powder and more coming, a woman and 2 children might be in danger. We're going. The expedition took 6 hours to cover 40 miles. Detective Mike Holden drove the lead snowmobile with Garrett riding behind, while Martinez and 2 search and rescue volunteers followed on a second machine pulling a sled with emergency equipment. The temperature hovered at -15 degrees, and visibility was so poor they navigated primarily by GPS. Hendricks Homestead appeared through the blizzard like a ghost. The main house was a 2-story log structure built in the 1920s, updated but still isolated, exactly the kind of place where Montana families tried to live off the grid. Smoke rose from the chimney, lights burned in the windows. Everything looked normal, except for one detail that made Garrett's skin crawl. 3 figures stood in the upstairs window, perfectly still, watching their approach. Even from a distance, Garrett could see they weren't moving at all. No shifting weight, no natural human fidgeting. Just absolute, motionless observation. "Sheriff," Holden's voice came through the radio headset. "Those people in the window haven't moved since we came into view 5 minutes ago." They approached the house with weapons drawn but not raised, calling out standard announcements. "Glacier County Sheriff's Department. We received a 911 call from this address. We're here to check on your welfare." The front door opened, and a man stepped out onto the porch. He wore jeans and a flannel shirt. The extreme cold. No coat, no gloves, barefoot in the snow. He smiled. That same smile the caller had described. Too wide, held too long, showing too many teeth. "Officers, thank you for coming all this way." His voice was pleasant, conversational, completely at odds with the fact that he was standing barefoot in sub-zero temperatures. "My wife Sarah has been having some mental health difficulties. The isolation, you understand. She made that call during an episode." "Sir, are you Mark Hendricks?" "I am." "This is my home. These are my children." 2 kids emerged from behind him, a girl and a boy, also dressed inappropriately for the weather, also smiling that too wide smile. "We're all fine here. Sarah is resting upstairs. We've given her some medication to help her calm down." Everything about the scene screamed wrong. The man's skin showed no signs of cold exposure despite bare feet in snow. The children stood with perfect posture, no fidgeting, no normal childhood movements, and all 3 were breathing in perfect synchronization. "Mr. Hendricks, we need to speak with your wife directly," Garrett said. "Standard procedure for wellness checks." Of course. "Please, come inside. It's so cold out here." Mark's smile never wavered. "Though I should warn you, Sarah may say some unusual things. The isolation has really affected her." Garrett made eye contact with Martinez and Holden, a silent communication perfected over years of partnership. Something was catastrophically wrong here. They entered the house in tactical formation, ready for anything. The interior was worse than the exterior. The house was immaculate, but wrong. Furniture arranged in perfect geometric patterns. Books on shelves organized by size with mathematical precision. Family photos on the walls, but every single one had been turned to face the wall, as if the family didn't want to see their own faces anymore. And the smell. Not bad exactly, but off. Like the house had been cleaned with chemicals that didn't exist in normal household products, something sharp and mineral that made Garrett's eyes water. "Sarah's in the bedroom," Mark said, gesturing up the stairs. "She's probably still sleeping from the medication. You can go check on her." The children sat down on the couch in perfect unison, folded their hands in identical positions, and stared at the adults with unblinking eyes. Garrett noticed something that made his blood run cold. Neither child had blinked once since they'd appeared, just like the 911 caller had reported about her husband. Martinez stayed with the children while Garrett and Holden climbed the stairs. The steps creaked normally, but those creaks seemed to echo wrong, like the house's acoustics had changed. At the top of the stairs, they found a hallway with 3 doors. 2 were open, showing empty bedrooms. The 3rd was closed, and from behind it came the sound of crying. Garrett knocked. "Mrs. Hendricks?" "This is Sheriff Garrett. We're responding to your 911 call." The crying stopped instantly. Then a voice, the same desperate whisper from the recording. "Is he with you?" "Are the children there?" "Your husband is downstairs. We need to speak with you." "Don't open the door while he can hear." "He'll know what I tell you." I don't know how, but they all know things they shouldn't. Wait until he goes to the basement. He always goes to the basement around 4 p.m. It's 3:47 now." Garrett checked his watch. She was right. 3:47 exactly. "Mrs. Hendricks, are you injured? Do you need medical attention?" "I'm locked in here. I barricaded the door. I have water from the bathroom sink and some crackers I kept hidden, but that's running out. Please, you have to believe me. Those things downstairs aren't my family. My real family is gone." Holden spoke up. "Ma'am, I'm Detective Holden." "Can you describe what happened? When did you first notice changes?" There was a long pause. Then, "It started 7 days ago. We got snowed in, lost power for a few hours. When it came back, Mark was different. Little things at first. He forgot our anniversary, something he'd never done in 10 years of marriage. He didn't recognize our neighbor's name when I mentioned them. Then the blinking thing. He just stopped blinking. What about your children?" "They changed the next day. I woke up and they were sitting at the kitchen table, both of them, staring at their cereal, for 2 hours, just staring. When I asked what was wrong, they both said, in perfect unison, 'We're learning how to eat,' like they'd never done it before." From downstairs, Mark's voice called up, "Sheriff, perhaps we should discuss this situation. I can explain my wife's delusions if you'd like." Sarah's whisper became more desperate. "Don't listen to him. He's going to try to convince you I'm crazy. He's very convincing. But watch their eyes. They never blink. Time it if you have to. And listen to how they talk. They take turns speaking. But it's like one mind controlling 3 mouths." Garrett made a decision. "We're going to get you out of there, Mrs. Hendricks. Stay quiet and stay safe." Downstairs they found Mark and the children exactly where they'd left them, in exactly the same positions. Not 1 centimeter of difference. Martinez looked shaken. "Sheriff, they haven't moved," she whispered. "Not even breathing movements. I swear to God, it's like they're mannequins when nobody's talking to them." Garrett addressed Mark directly. "Mr. Hendricks, we need to take your wife to get a psychiatric evaluation. For her safety and yours. That means we'll need to transport her to Kalispell Regional. In this weather? Sheriff, that's a 6-hour drive in good conditions. In this blizzard, it could take days. Surely we can wait until—" "It's not a request, sir. We have protocols for mental health emergencies." Mark's smile finally changed. It got wider, impossibly wide, like his face was stretching beyond normal human capability. "I see. Well then, let me consult with my family." He turned to the children, and the 3 of them stared at each other in silence for exactly 15 seconds. Then all 3 turned back to face the officers and spoke in perfect unison. The same words from 3 mouths. "We cannot allow you to take Sarah." "That's not your decision to—" Garrett began, but Mark cut him off. "We've been using these bodies for 6 days now. We're still learning their capabilities and limitations. We haven't perfected human behavior yet. The blinking, the proper responses, the facial expressions. Sarah noticed because she knows these bodies better than anyone. But we're learning. We're getting better." Holden had his hand on his weapon. "Who are we?" "What are you talking about?" "We don't have names in the way you'd understand. We exist in spaces between matter, in the quantum foam that underlies reality. We've been observing your species for millennia, but observation isn't understanding. To truly comprehend humans, we need to operate human bodies, experience human sensation, think through human neural pathways." The 3 bodies, because Garrett could no longer think of them as Mark and his children, stood up in perfect synchronization. The storm provided perfect conditions. Isolation, no witnesses, time to practice. We've learned so much. Did you know pain is fascinating? We made these bodies hurt themselves in controlled ways to understand the sensation. And emotions, so complex, so chemical, so beautiful. Martinez had her weapon drawn now. What happened to the real Mark Hendricks and his children? They're gone. We studied their neural patterns, copied what we needed, and then recycled the biological material. These are new bodies, grown from the originals but improved, stronger, more efficient, don't require sleep or feel cold. We're still learning to mimic normal human behavior, but we'll perfect it eventually. Jesus Christ, Holden muttered. The three bodies tilted their heads in unison. Ah, religious reference. We've been studying your spiritual concepts. Fascinating how you create elaborate frameworks to explain what you don't understand. We're not divine or demonic. We're just another form of consciousness, exploring physical existence. Garrett fought to keep his voice steady. What do you want? To learn. To experience. And eventually, to spread. This homestead is our laboratory, but Montana has so many isolated families, so many opportunities to practice, to refine our mimicry. By next winter, we'll be perfect at being human, and then we'll start expanding more aggressively. We can't let that happen, Garrett said. All three bodies laughed, the exact same laugh at the exact same pitch. You can't stop us. We can abandon these bodies and inhabit new ones within hours. Shoot us, burn us, it doesn't matter. We're not the bodies, we're what's inside them, and we're very, very patient. The standoff lasted for 3 seconds that felt like hours. Then Martinez made a decision that probably saved all their lives. She ran for the stairs, heading for Sarah's barricaded room. The three bodies moved with inhuman speed, but not toward Martinez. Instead, they ran for the basement door, all three grabbing the handle together and wrenching it open with strength that tore the door from its hinges. "The basement!" Garrett shouted. "Don't let them—" But they were already gone, disappearing into darkness below. From the depths came sounds that shouldn't exist, grinding, clicking, wet-tearing noises that suggested biological processes happening at accelerated rates. Holden ran to the basement door and immediately recoiled. Jesus, what is that? Garrett looked and wished he hadn't. The basement wasn't a normal underground room anymore. The walls, floor, and ceiling had been transformed into something organic, pulsing and wet, covered in growths that might have been fungal, or might have been something that had no terrestrial equivalent. And moving through this biological horror show were shapes that looked partially human, but were clearly in the process of being deconstructed and rebuilt. "Close it," Garrett ordered. "Board it up. We're getting Sarah and getting out of here." Martinez had reached Sarah's room and was helping her tear down the barricade. The woman who emerged was thin, exhausted, terrified, but sane. Utterly, completely sane. "You saw," Sarah said simply. "You saw they're not human anymore." "We saw," Garrett confirmed. "We're leaving." Now. The evacuation was a nightmare of logistics. They couldn't fit everyone on 2 snowmobiles, and going back for more vehicles would take hours. But Sarah pointed to the garage where a snowcat, a tracked vehicle designed for extreme snow, sat waiting. "Mark bought it last year," she explained. "He was always prepared for emergencies." Funny how this wasn't what he prepared for. They loaded into the snowcat, leaving the homestead and its basement horrors behind. The journey back took 8 hours through worsening conditions, but they made it. Sarah Hendricks was placed in protective custody while Garrett filed reports that he knew would be classified or dismissed. The official story became that the Hendricks family had died in the blizzard, bodies not recovered. The homestead was declared structurally unsound and quarantined. But Garrett knew the truth. Those things in the basement weren't dead. They were learning, practicing, perfecting their imitation of humanity. And Sarah's description of her husband forgetting basic facts about his own life suggested they didn't perfectly copy memories when they took over bodies. 6 months later, Garrett started receiving reports from other isolated Montana counties. Families acting strange after being snowed in. Loved ones who stopped blinking, who forgot important personal details, who moved in ways that weren't quite human. The 911 calls started coming in. "They're not my parents anymore. My husband hasn't blinked in 3 days. Something's wrong with my children. They speak in unison." And every time, by the time authorities arrived, they found either abandoned homesteads or families who seemed perfectly normal, except for tiny behavioral quirks that only loved ones would notice. Garrett retired 18 months after the Hendricks incident. His resignation letter mentioned health concerns, but colleagues noticed he'd stopped responding to any calls involving snowed-in families. He'd seen something that broke his faith in the job's fundamental premise, that officers could protect people from harm. Because how do you protect humanity from something that can wear human bodies like clothes, that practices being human in isolated places, that spreads slowly and patiently across rural communities? How do you fight an enemy that doesn't need to kill when it can simply replace? Sarah Hendricks eventually moved to Arizona, as far from Montana winters as she could get. She refused to talk about what happened, but she developed a habit of timing people's blinks, of watching for subtle signs that the person she was talking to might not be entirely human anymore. And in the Montana backcountry, in homesteads cut off by winter storms, the replacement process continued. Families went to sleep human and woke up as something else's crude imitation, getting better with each iteration, learning to pass as normal until even close friends couldn't tell the difference. The 911 calls kept coming, desperate voices whispering that their loved ones had changed. But by the time help arrived, it was always too late. The things that weren't quite human anymore had perfected their performance just enough to convince authorities that the caller was delusional, isolated, suffering from cabin fever. And every winter, the snow fell heavy across Montana, isolating families in perfect laboratories where patient alien consciousness could practice being human, one homestead at a time. Deputy Lisa Martinez took the call that would end her law enforcement career on a Tuesday afternoon that seemed completely ordinary until it wasn't. The 911 system logged it at 2:17 p.m., duration 3 minutes and 42 seconds, caller ID showing the Watson residence to 12 miles outside town. 911, what's your emergency? Silence. Complete, absolute silence. Not even breathing. Hello? This is 911. Can you hear me? Then, after 15 seconds, yes. A woman's voice, flat and effectless. What's your emergency, ma'am? There is no emergency. Same flat tone, no inflection, no emotion. Everything is fine. Please don't come. Martinez felt her instincts activate. 10 years of law enforcement had taught her to hear what wasn't being said. Ma'am, if you're in danger, if someone's making you say this, just stay on the line. I am not in danger. Nobody is making me say anything. Everything is fine. Please don't come. The words were right, but the delivery was wrong. Too precise, too mechanical, like someone reading a script. Ma'am, can you tell me your name? Pause. Exactly 5 seconds, as if the caller was consulting something. Jennifer Watson. This is my residence. There is no emergency. Please don't come. Mrs. Watson, are you alone? Yes, I am alone. Everything is fine. Please don't come. Is your husband home? Another 5-second pause. My husband is at work. I am alone. Everything is fine. Please don't come. Martinez checked the database. Jennifer Watson, 41, married to David Watson, 43. 2 teenage children. No history of domestic disturbances, no mental health calls. Model citizens. But something about this call was making Martinez's skin crawl. Mrs. Watson, you called 911. Are you sure you didn't mean to call someone else? I did not call 911. Everything is fine. Please don't come. But the system clearly showed the Watson residence number initiating the call. Ma'am, our system shows this call originated from your phone. If it was an accidental dial, that's okay, but I need to verify your safety. The silence that followed lasted exactly 30 seconds. Martinez could hear something in the background now. A high-pitched tone, barely audible, like tinnitus translated into external sound. Then, there has been a mistake. I did not call. Everything is fine. Please don't come. Martinez made a decision. Ma'am, we're required to do a welfare check when calls come from your address. An officer will be there within 20 minutes. No. The first emotion in the entire call. Pure panic. Please don't come. If you come, it will know. It will spread. Please don't come. Ma'am, what will know? What will spread? The silence. It started with David 3 days ago. He came home from work and he was quiet. Not normal quiet. Absolute silence. He doesn't make sounds anymore when he moves, when he breathes, when he eats. And then the children caught it. They stopped making sounds. And now it's in me and I can feel it growing, eating every sound I try to make. Please don't come. If you come close enough, it will hear you too, and then you'll carry it away from here. Martinez felt ice in her veins. Mrs. Watson, what kind of silence are we talking about? It's alive. The silence is alive. It moves through the air like water. It drowns sound, consumes it, grows stronger from it. David brought it home from the electronics factory where he works. Something in the machinery, some frequency they were testing. It opened a space where sound goes to die. And that space followed him home. Where are your husband and children now? They're here. They're standing around me right now. They've been standing here for 2 hours, perfectly still, watching me try to resist the silence. Their mouths are open like they're screaming, but no sound comes out. Not even breathing sounds. They're moving without making any noise at all. Martinez was already signaling to Garrett and Holden. This was spiraling into territory beyond standard protocols. Mrs. Watson, I'm sending help. Stay on the line with me. No! You don't understand. The silence is listening to this call. Every word we speak feeds it, makes it stronger. It's learning from our conversation how to spread through phone lines, through electronic signals. If you send people here, it will infect them too. It will spread through your entire department, through the whole town. Ma'am, that doesn't make medical sense. It's not medical. It's not biological. It's something else, something that exists in the spaces between sounds, in the gaps where noise should be. When I talk, I can feel it consuming my words from the inside, eating the vibrations before they can leave my throat. Every sentence is harder to speak than the last. The high-pitched tone in the background was getting louder, more present. Martinez realized it wasn't coming through the phone line. It was in the room with her, emerging from the 911 equipment itself. Oh God, Jennifer's voice came through, now barely a whisper. It's in the phone system. It's in your building. I can hear it reaching through the connection. You have to hang up. You have to cut all communication with this number. Please, before it... The line went silent. Not dead, not disconnected. Silent in a way that was somehow different from normal phone silence. Martinez could still sense an open connection, could feel something on the other end, but it wasn't making any sound at all. Then her equipment started failing. Computer monitors flickered, radio systems squealed feedback, the fluorescent lights buzzed with increasing intensity. And underneath it all, that high-pitched tone growing stronger, becoming almost visible as the air itself seemed to vibrate with its presence. Martinez tried to speak, to call for help, but no sound emerged from her throat. She could feel her vocal cords moving, could sense the air moving through her larynx, but the actual sound was being absorbed by something before it could propagate through the air. She ran from the dispatch room into the main office where Garrett and Holden were reviewing files. She saw their mouths moving in alarm, saw them rushing toward her, but heard absolutely nothing. The world had gone completely, impossibly silent. Holden grabbed her shoulders, shaking her, his mouth forming words she couldn't hear. She pointed desperately at her ears, at her throat, trying to communicate the impossible thing that was happening. Garrett's eyes went wide with understanding. He grabbed a notepad and wrote, "What happened?" Martinez wrote back, her hands shaking. 911 call. Watson residence. Silence spreading. Can't make sound. Garrett tested it himself, shouting at the top of his lungs. Martinez saw his face red with effort, his neck tendons standing out, but heard absolutely nothing. The silence had spread from the phone line to the dispatch room, to everyone who'd been near the equipment. Dr. Robert Chen arrived within minutes, having been in the building for an unrelated consultation. He wrote his questions. Physical symptoms? Pain? Difficulty breathing? Martinez shook her head. Everything worked normally, except sound production and reception. She could feel her heart beating, could sense vibrations through her bones, but no actual sound reached her eardrums from external sources. Chen ran tests with makeshift experiments. He dropped a book on the floor. They saw it hit, felt the vibration through their feet, but heard nothing. He set up his phone to record audio, shouted into it, and played it back. The recording showed normal audio levels, but they couldn't hear the playback. The silence wasn't affecting sound itself, it was affecting their ability to produce or perceive it. Psychosomatic, Chen wrote. Mass hysteria from the call. But Martinez knew better. She'd felt something come through that phone line, something that had infected her auditory processing in ways that transcended psychological explanation. And the woman's warning rang through her silent world. It will spread. She wrote, "Need to check Watson house." Woman said family infected first. Garrett nodded and organized a response team. But the situation grew more complicated by the minute. The silence was spreading. Within an hour, everyone who'd been in the sheriff's department building had lost the ability to hear or produce sound. They could communicate only through writing and gesture. The drive to the Watson residence was surreal. 3 vehicles filled with silent officers, unable to use radios, unable to coordinate verbally, watching the world go by in absolute silence. Martinez sat in the passenger seat, watching Garrett's lips move in what she assumed were curses, seeing other drivers honk their horns soundlessly as the sheriff's convoy ran red lights. The Watson house was a modern ranch-style home in a subdivision where every house looked similar. Middle-class, comfortable, manicured lawn even under the snow. Basketball hoop in the driveway. Absolutely normal, except for one detail. The front door stood open, and in the doorway stood 4 figures in perfect stillness. The Watson family. Father, mother, 2 teenage kids, all standing in the exact same posture, heads tilted at the same angle, mouths open wide as if screaming, but producing no sound at all. Not even the sound of breathing. Martinez felt her stomach turn as they approached. The family's eyes tracked the officer's movements, but otherwise they remained perfectly motionless. As they got within 10 feet, she could see that their mouths weren't just open. They were impossibly open, jaws dislocated to create apertures far wider than human anatomy should allow. Garrett held up his notepad. "Can you hear us?" No response. The four figures just stood there, mouths wide, eyes tracking, absolutely silent. Holden tried a different approach, walking around behind the family to look inside the house. He immediately froze, his face going pale, and gestured for others to see. Inside the Watson home, every surface was covered in what looked like acoustic foam, but organic, fleshy growths that absorbed light and seemed to pulse with rhythms that had nothing to do with biological heartbeats. The walls, ceiling, furniture, everything had been overtaken by this sound-devouring substance. And in the center of the living room was the source. It looked like a tear in reality, an opening to some place where the laws of physics worked differently. Through it poured absolute silence, a void that consumed every vibration, every wave, every possible sound that came near it. Dr. Chen wrote frantically, "Impossible. Violates thermodynamics. Sound is energy. This is destroying energy itself." The four Watson family members suddenly moved, all at once, stepping aside in perfect synchronization to create a path to the house's interior. Their open mouths seemed to pulse, and Martinez realized they were trying to speak, to scream. But the silence inside them was so complete that no sound could escape. Garrett pulled everyone back. He wrote, "Contamination protocol. Nobody else goes near. Call CDC." But Martinez knew CDC protocols wouldn't help with this. This wasn't biological, wasn't chemical. This was something else entirely, something that existed in the gaps between physical laws, that had found a way into reality through some accident at David Watson's workplace. As they retreated to the vehicles, Martinez looked back at the house. The family still stood in the doorway, mouths impossibly wide, and she could have sworn she saw something moving in those dark openings, tendrils of solidified silence, reaching out toward the officers like blind worms seeking sound to consume. Over the next week, the situation deteriorated. Everyone who'd been exposed to the Watson house lost hearing permanently. The silence didn't fade. It was a fundamental alteration to their ability to process sound. They could feel vibrations through bone conduction, could sense bass frequencies through their bodies, but conventional hearing was gone. Worse, they became carriers. Anyone who spent extended time around the silent officers began losing their hearing too. The silence spread like a contagion, jumping from person to person through proximity, through shared air, through mechanisms nobody understood. The Watson house was quarantined, but the tear in reality continued growing. The zone of absolute silence expanded outward at roughly 1 foot per day, consuming sound in an ever-widening radius. Plants in the zone died, not from lack of nutrients, but from the absence of the subtle vibrations that normal cellular processes produced. Martinez tried everything to communicate what had happened, to warn others, but written words couldn't convey the horror of living in absolute silence. Deaf people had sign language, community, adaptation strategies developed over lifetimes. The silence victims had nothing. They'd lost hearing too quickly to learn, in ways that defied medical intervention. She retired 3 months after the Watson call. Her resignation letter was brief. "The silence is inside me now. Every day it grows stronger. Eventually, I won't even hear my own thoughts. I can't protect people when I can't communicate with them. The last thing she wrote before leaving town was a warning. Don't answer calls from numbers in the quarantine zone. The silence can spread through phone lines, through digital signals, through any medium that carries sound. It's learning to propagate through our communication networks. One day, someone in another city will answer a call from this area code, and the silence will spread there too, and then to another city, and another. Eventually, the whole world will go silent, not deaf. Silence is different from deafness. Deaf people can't hear sound. We can't even produce it anymore. We exist in a reality where sound has been edited out, where vibrations are consumed before they can propagate. Sometimes I see them, the Watson family, in my dreams. Still standing in that doorway, mouths wide open, screaming into the void inside themselves. They're trying to warn people, but the silence inside them has become so total that their screams can't even reach their own ears. I'm leaving Montana, going as far as I can from the quarantine zone. But I know I'm a carrier. Everywhere I go, I'll spread a little more silence. Eventually, I'll have to isolate myself completely, live alone where I can't infect others. The worst part? I can still feel my vocal cords working. I can still sense my ears attempting to process sound. But there's nothing there anymore. The silence has eaten every sound I could ever make or hear, and it's still hungry. God help us all. The silence is spreading, and there's no way to stop something that exists in the absence of everything. The quarantine zone around the Watson house eventually expanded to encompass 3 square miles. Everyone who'd lived in that radius had to be relocated, all of them carriers of the silence, all of them spreading it slowly to wherever they went. The official explanation blamed an industrial accident at the electronics factory where David Watson had worked, chemical exposure causing mass auditory nerve damage. But those who'd seen the tear in reality, who'd witnessed the Watson family standing in their doorway with mouths impossibly wide, knew the truth. Somewhere between sound and silence, a new form of reality had been born. And it was patient, eternal, and absolutely unstoppable. Detective Mike Holden answered the forwarded 911 call at 11:23 p.m. on a March night that would destroy his understanding of linear time. The caller ID showed a cell phone registered to Marcus Chen, 52, a pharmacist who lived alone on the outskirts of Glacier County. The call had been transferred to Holden because the initial dispatcher had become so disturbed she'd walked off shift mid-conversation. Mr. Chen, this is Detective Holden. I understand you called 911? Yes, this is the 4th time I've called. The first 3 times nobody believed me. But you will. You have to. Because I've already lived through this conversation 3 times, and I know exactly what you're going to say next. Holden's instinct was to dismiss this as mental health crisis, but something in Chen's voice stopped him. Not panic or delusion, but exhausted certainty. Mr. Chen, I haven't said anything yet. You're about to ask if I'm on any medications. Then you'll ask if I've been drinking. Then you'll suggest I might be experiencing a medical emergency and offer to send paramedics. And I'll tell you, again, that I'm not sick, I'm not drunk, I'm not crazy. I'm trapped in a time loop that resets every 6 hours, and I'm the only one who remembers. Holden felt his skin prickle. How long has this been happening? Today is March 17th. I've lived this day 73 times. I know because I've been keeping count in a notebook that I hide in places the loop doesn't reset. Inside the walls, buried in the yard. Each time the loop restarts, I dig them up and add another tally mark. Mr. Chen, that's not scientifically possible? I know. I'm a pharmacist, detective. I understand biology and chemistry, but I also understand observation, and I've observed the same 6 hours repeat 73 times. I wake up at 5:17 a.m. to my alarm. I make coffee. I drive to work. At 7:42 a.m., there's always a car accident at the intersection of Main and 5th. Red sedan runs the light, hits a blue pickup. At 10:33 a.m., Mrs. Patterson comes into the pharmacy asking about her blood pressure medication. At 11:23 p.m., I call 911 and have this exact conversation. What happens after this conversation? At 11:28 p.m., the connection gets fuzzy. At 11:29 p.m., you'll say you're sending someone to check on me. At 11:30 p.m., the line goes dead. At 5:17 a.m., my alarm goes off, and the loop starts again. And I'm the only one who remembers. Everyone else resets. Every time. Holden was writing notes despite his skepticism. Have you tried changing the pattern? Not calling 911? I've tried everything, Detective. I've stayed home from work. The loop resets. I've driven out of town. As soon as I get 20 miles out, I black out and wake up at 5:17 a.m. in my bed. I've tried staying awake through the reset time. Doesn't matter. At 5:17 a.m., I'm suddenly in bed with the alarm going off. No memory of the transition. What about preventing the car accident you mentioned? Tried that. Loop 61. I went to the intersection early, stopped traffic, prevented the collision. The loop reset anyway. I've saved the accident victims 43 times. It doesn't change anything. The loop doesn't care what I do. It just keeps resetting. Holden checked the time. 11:24 p.m. Mr. Chen, what am I supposed to do with this information? I don't know. That's why I keep calling. I've tried different approaches each time. Once I claimed to have information about a crime. Once I said I was suicidal. Once I just screamed into the phone. Nothing changes the outcome. But I have to keep trying because the alternative is accepting that I'll live this day forever. Is there anything unusual that happened before the loop started? Any accidents, exposures, head injuries? I've thought about that constantly. March 16th, the day before the loop started, was completely normal. I worked my shift, went home, watched TV, went to bed. Nothing unusual. I woke up on March 17th, lived it normally, went to bed, and then woke up on March 17th again, and again, and again. Holden heard something in the background, a sound like reality glitching, like audio skipping. Mr. Chen, what was that noise? That's what happens when I get close to the reset time. Reality starts breaking down around me. Objects in my peripheral vision repeat themselves. Sounds echo without source. Time itself becomes elastic. Seconds stretch and compress randomly. I'm sending a unit to your location, Holden said, watching the clock. 11:26 p.m. You are. 2 officers will arrive at my house at 11:47 p.m. Deputy Collins and Trooper Martinez. They'll find me sitting in my living room, perfectly healthy, completely sane. They'll do a welfare check, find nothing wrong, and leave at 11:54 p.m. At 5:17 a.m., the loop resets and they'll never remember having been here. How do you know? Because it's happened before. This is loop 73. I've seen these exact events play out 73 times. Deputy Collins will ask if I live alone. Martinez will notice my pharmacy degree on the wall and ask about my work. They'll share a look that says they think I'm wasting their time, and then they'll leave, and I'll be alone again, waiting for the reset. The line started to crackle with that strange glitching sound again. 11:27 p.m. Mr. Chen, let's assume you're telling the truth. Why would this be happening to you specifically? I don't know. For the first time, real emotion broke through Chen's exhausted monotone. I'm nobody special. I fill prescriptions, I live alone, I have no family, no enemies, nothing that would make me a target for whatever this is. Sometimes I think I'm being punished for something, but I can't figure out what. Other times I think it's random, that I'm just cosmically unlucky. Have you tried leaving messages for yourself? Creating evidence that would survive the reset? The notebooks I mentioned, yes, they survive because I hide them outside the immediate reset zone. But anything in my house, anything on my person, resets perfectly. I've tried writing on my skin with permanent marker, carving notes into furniture, recording videos. All of it resets. The only things that survive are items I physically remove from the reset radius before the loop cycles. 11:28 p.m. The line quality was deteriorating rapidly. Detective, it's starting. The breakdown before the reset. You need to write this down. Document everything I've said. In your timeline, this conversation will have happened. You'll have notes. Maybe that will help somehow. Help how? I don't know. But I have to believe that eventually something I do will break the loop. Maybe if enough people know about it, if enough documentation exists in the outside timeline, someone will figure out how to stop it. Because the alternative is that I'm going to live March 17th forever, and I don't know how many more loops I can take before The line went dead at exactly 11:30 p.m. Holden sat in silence, staring at his notes. The rational explanation was that Marcus Chen was experiencing a psychotic break, likely paranoid schizophrenia with temporal delusion. The irrational explanation was that a man was somehow trapped in a 6-hour time loop, condemned to relive the same day endlessly. He dispatched Collins and Martinez anyway, with instructions to conduct a thorough welfare check and mental health evaluation. They arrived at Chen's modest ranch house at 11:47 p.m. to find him sitting in his living room, perfectly composed, waiting for them. Deputy Collins. Trooper Martinez. Chen greeted them by name before they'd introduced themselves. You're here to check on me after the 911 call. I'm fine, as you can see. In about 3 minutes, Deputy Collins, you'll ask if I live alone. 4 minutes after that, Martinez, you'll notice my pharmacy degree on the wall and ask about my work. Collins and Martinez exchanged the exact look that Chen had described, shared skepticism about wasting their time on a delusional caller. Sir, do you live alone? Collins asked. Chen smiled sadly. Right on schedule. The welfare check proceeded exactly as Chen had predicted, down to specific phrases and timing. When Martinez noticed the pharmacy degree and asked about his work, Holden, listening via radio, felt his skepticism crack. After Collins and Martinez cleared the scene at 11:54 p.m., Holden called Chen's cell phone directly. It rang 6 times before Chen answered. Detective Holden, I knew you'd call back. This happens sometimes. About 1 in every 5 loops, the detective assigned to my case follows up. Mr. Chen, you predicted every detail of that welfare check. How? Because I've lived it 73 times. I've memorized everything. Every conversation, every expression, every glance. This day is my prison, and I know every inch of my cell. What happens in the next 47 minutes before the reset? I'll try to sleep, even though I know it's futile. At some point, I'll drift off, and then I'll be jarred awake by my alarm at 5:17 a.m. Or sometimes I'll stay awake, watching the clock count down. At 5:16:59, reality starts to fracture. I can see through my own hands, can hear tomorrow's sounds bleeding through. And then everything goes white, and I'm in bed. The alarm is ringing, and it's March 17th again. I want to help you, but I don't know how. Neither do I. That's the worst part. I've tried everything I can think of. I've attempted suicide 14 times. Pills, hanging, gunshot. Every time I wake up at 5:17 a.m. perfectly healthy. The loop won't let me die. I've tried extreme actions, starting fires, crashing my car, attacking people. Nothing works. The loop resets regardless. Holden heard the desperation in Chen's voice, the weight of living the same 6 hours 73 times. "What do you need from me?" "Document everything. Write detailed reports. Maybe if enough documentation exists in the external timeline, someone with more resources will investigate. Maybe there's a pattern across multiple loops that I can't see because I'm inside it." "Maybe." Chen's voice broke. "Maybe I'm not crazy. Maybe this is really happening. And if it is, maybe someone can figure out why and stop it. I will. I promise. Thank you. I should go now. Try to rest before the reset. Detective, if you remember this conversation tomorrow, if your timeline continues normally, do something for me." "What's that?" "Live your day. Appreciate that it ends, that tomorrow will be different, that time moves forward for you. You have no idea how precious that is until it's taken away." The call ended at 12:14 a.m. Holden wrote a detailed report of the conversation, including every specific prediction Chen had made that came true. He flagged it for review by Captain Walsh and requested psychiatric consultation. At 5:17 a.m. the next morning, March 18th in Holden's timeline, he drove to Chen's house unannounced. He found the pharmacist making coffee, looking confused at the early visitor. "Mr. Chen, I'm Detective Holden. We spoke last night." "I'm sorry, Detective, but I don't recall speaking with you." "Is something wrong?" Holden's blood ran cold. Chen had no memory of their conversation, of the 73 loops of anything. Either he'd had a psychotic break that resolved overnight, or— "What's today's date, Mr. Chen?" "March 18th. Why?" Or the loop had finally broken, and Chen had been released from his temporal prison, but released with no memory of it, no awareness of the 73 days he'd lost reliving the same 6 hours. Holden showed him the report from the previous night. Chen read it with growing confusion and concern. "This sounds insane, but I have been having the strangest sense of déjà vu lately. Like I've done everything before, and I found something odd yesterday." He led Holden to his backyard and pointed to a disturbed patch of earth. "I was gardening and found this." He dug up a waterproof container. Inside were 73 notebooks, each with a date and the words loop, number, written on the cover. Each contained detailed documentation of that iteration of March 17th, written in Chen's handwriting. "I don't remember writing these," Chen whispered. "But this is my handwriting. These are my observations. What happened to me?" Holden had no answer. Over the following weeks, Chen underwent extensive medical and psychological evaluation. He was physically healthy, mentally stable, but the notebooks existed. 73 detailed accounts of living the same day repeatedly, all in his handwriting, all hidden in places he had no memory of hiding them. The truly disturbing discovery came when Holden reviewed 9/11 call logs. There was no record of Chen calling on March 17th. No dispatch logs, no recordings, nothing. Yet Holden had his own detailed notes of the conversation, and Collins and Martinez confirmed conducting a welfare check at that address that night. "It's like two timelines existed simultaneously," Dr. Chen from the medical examiner's office theorized. In one timeline, Chen was trapped in a loop. In another, hours, time progressed normally, but somehow information bled between them. The phone calls, the welfare check, the notebooks surviving the reset. "That's impossible," Holden protested. "So is living the same day 73 times. Yet the evidence suggests it happened. Marcus Chen tried to return to normal life, but the experience had changed him, even though he didn't consciously remember it. He developed an obsession with time, checking clocks constantly, maintaining detailed logs of daily activities, experiencing profound anxiety when routines repeated. "I feel like I'm forgetting something important," he told Holden during a follow-up interview. "Like I lost time somewhere, and my mind is trying to recover it. Sometimes I'll be doing something mundane, making coffee, driving to work, and I'll get this overwhelming sense that I've done it hundreds of times before. Not just normal routine familiarity, but exact déjà vu down to the smallest detail." The notebooks remained Chen's only evidence of his lost time. He read them obsessively, trying to trigger memories that wouldn't surface. Loop 44's entry particularly haunted him. "I'm starting to forget what it feels like to experience new things. Every sensation, every thought, every moment is a repeat. I'm losing my sense of self. If I am only the sum of my experiences, and all my experiences are the same day repeated endlessly, who am I? Am I still Marcus Chen? Or am I just a recording of him playing over and over?" Holden filed his final report with a conclusion that satisfied no one. Subject experienced temporal anomaly of unknown origin. Evidence suggests repetition of March 17th occurred 73 times from subject's perspective, while external timeline progressed normally. Mechanism unknown. Cause unknown. Prognosis for recurrence unknown. 3. Months after the incident, Holden started receiving calls from other counties. People reporting déjà vu so intense they could predict conversations word for word. Individuals claiming they'd lived the same day multiple times. A woman in Wyoming insisting she'd been trapped in a 3-hour loop for 6 months. Each case followed similar patterns. No memory after the loop broke, but evidence, hidden notebooks, buried objects, documented predictions, suggesting the time repetition was real. "It's spreading," Holden told Captain Walsh. "Or it's always been happening, and we're just starting to recognize it." How many people might be trapped in time loops right now, living the same hours repeatedly, trying desperately to communicate with a timeline that keeps resetting them? The question haunted him. Every routine day, every moment of déjà vu, every person who seemed oddly certain about future events. Were they trapped in loops? Were they experiencing time differently, living days or hours repeatedly, while the rest of reality moved forward? Marcus Chen called Holden one last time, 6 months after the incident. "Detective, I need to tell you something. I've been having dreams. Not normal dreams. Memories. I'm starting to remember the loops. Not all of them, but flashes. Moments from different iterations bleeding through." "What do you remember?" "Pain, desperation, the 47th loop. I tried to hang myself. I remember the rope, the chair, the moment of decision, and I remember waking up at 5:17 a.m. anyway, perfectly fine. The loop wouldn't let me escape even through death." Chen's voice broke. "I lived through my own suicide 14 times, Detective. 14 times I tried to end it, and 14 times the universe said no and reset me. What kind of reality does that? What kind of prison is so perfect that even death can't free you?" "I don't know, Marcus. I wish I had answers. I'm moving away from Montana." "Far away." "I can't stay here, can't keep living in the place where I lost 73 days of my life. Every street corner, every routine moment, it all triggers memories of the loops. I need to start over somewhere with no déjà vu, no repeated moments." "I understand. Where will you go?" "Somewhere warm. Somewhere with no snow, no cold. Montana winters are too long anyway. Too many days that feel the same. I need variation, chaos, Unpredictability. I need to know that tomorrow will be different from today. Chen hung up, and Holden never heard from him again. But the case stayed with him, a reminder that reality was far stranger and more terrifying than any police manual acknowledged. Because if time could trap someone in a 6-hour loop for what felt like months, if the universe could force someone to relive the same day endlessly, then linear time itself was a privilege, not a guarantee. Any day could be the day that started repeating. Any moment could become the prison you'd inhabit forever. And the worst part? If it happened to you, if you got trapped in a temporal loop, you might be the only one who'd remember. The rest of reality would keep moving forward, oblivious to your suffering, unable to help even if you could communicate with them. Holden started living each day with new appreciation, grateful that his yesterday was different from his today, that his tomorrow would bring new experiences. Because somewhere out there, someone might be trapped in their own temporal prison, living the same hours endlessly, screaming into phone lines to timelines that would forget them with every reset. And there was nothing anyone could do to save them. Sheriff David Garrett retired 16 months after the Hendricks homestead incident. Deputy Lisa Martinez quit 3 months after the Watson silence call. And Detective Mike Holden took medical leave 6 months after Marcus Chen's time loop case. The three met one final time at a diner outside Glacier County to compare notes and try to make sense of what they'd experienced. 3 impossible cases in 18 months, Garrett said, stirring coffee that had gone cold. 3 different phenomena that violated everything we know about reality. That can't be coincidence. Martinez communicated through a text-to-speech app on her phone, her permanent silence making verbal conversation impossible. The silence taught me. That reality is more fragile than we think. Sound exists in the gaps between things. When those gaps close, sound ceases. Maybe all of physics works that way, dependent on spaces and gaps we don't even know exist. Holden added, Chen's time loop suggested time itself isn't as linear as we experience it. If it can trap someone in repetition, what else can it do? Skip forward? Run backwards? Branch into multiple timelines? The entities replacing people at the Hendricks place, Garrett said. They claim to exist in spaces between matter. Between quantum states, like they're native to the gaps Martinez mentioned. They sat in silence, literal silence for Martinez, metaphorical for the others, contemplating the implications. 3 cases that seemed unrelated but shared a common thread. Reality had gaps, spaces between things, and something existed in those spaces. Something that could consume sound, trap time, wear human bodies like disguises. I've been having nightmares, Holden admitted. I dream that all 3 phenomena are connected. That something is testing our reality from the outside, probing for weaknesses. The silence, the loops, the replacements. They're experiments. Learning how to interact with our dimension. Martinez typed, what if we're the experiments? What if Montana was chosen as a testing ground because it's isolated, rural, easy-to-contain reports of impossible events? Then the question is, Garrett said, are the experiments over, or are they just beginning? None of them had an answer. They finished their coffee, exchanged contact information they'd probably never use, and went their separate ways. 3 former law enforcement officers broken by cases that shouldn't exist, carrying knowledge that would sound insane to anyone who hadn't witnessed it firsthand. 6 months later, 9/11 dispatch centers across Montana started receiving a new type of call. Different voices, different locations, but always the same message. The gaps are widening. The spaces between things are growing. Soon there won't be enough reality left to hold us all. And then, always, the line would go dead with that familiar sound, like hundreds of voices whispering in unison, or time skipping forward, or absolute silence consuming the connection. The calls were logged, investigated, and ultimately dismissed as pranks or mass hysteria. Because the alternative, that reality itself was coming apart at the seams, that the spaces between matter and energy and time were expanding, that something from outside was pushing its way in, was too terrifying to officially acknowledge. But those who'd lived through the impossible knew better. They heard those 911 calls and recognized them for what they were. Warnings from people who'd seen the gaps, who'd touched the spaces between, who knew that Montana's horrors were just the beginning of something much worse. The recordings existed in dispatch databases across the state, digital evidence of reality's fragmentation. Voices calling from the edges of the known world, trying desperately to warn anyone who would listen. The gaps are widening. The spaces are growing. The things that live between are coming through, and there's nothing anyone can do to stop it.